Hi, we are the
Hi, everybody.
Heretic Sisters. And we'll just start with introductions. I'm the hopeful heretic. I'm interested in exploring all of the frequencies with the hope of revealing something higher than our limited minds can grasp. Questions I'm pondering: what is the truth? Can we have both an individual truth and a shared truth? Is it possible to be an individual within a group? What is our individual versus shared responsibilities? Is shared and balanced equity possible?
Mhm. And I'm the fearful heretic. I'm all about getting to the bottom of things, and at the same time, I can be superficial because I want to try everything at once. Questions I'm pondering: how do one see reality without distortion? How to embrace all the blooming complexities of life? How to express my experiences in creative work? The question, what's it all for, has not left me since I was a teenager.
Okay, great. So today we're going to talk about heretics because that's our profile, and that's what that's what this podcast is about. So, Tatiana, why don't you lead us to talk about heretics?
Yes, let's start. And first of all, we're talking in terms of human design. So 5-1, the profile we share in this knowledge is common for us both, and it is so we are called heretics. In general, what does it mean? I would prefer to start with this kind of philosophical approach. The first thing we start with the definition. Yeah, what is heresy? That of course it is. The word itself has a Greek root, uh, and it originally meant choice. Yeah, or thing chosen. So actually, here already one sees the roots of this uh, heretical knowledge. You've chosen something that is different from the mainstream. That's actually what is heresy in general. Yeah, that you shouldn't be a philosopher to receive it like this. Uh, Actually, in my own understanding, while preparing to this podcast, what I came to is that actually heresy and the reception of heresy is something truly similar to the xenophobic, and the way we understand the things that are not that are new for us, something strange and something new. So, like being heretics and being heretic sisters, like we are, means bringing something new and not usual. And here we see the reaction here here in the first picture in the middle. We see the reaction that our poor brotherhood and sisterhood of heretics meets in this life. Yeah, this happened. This particular picture describes the situation in 13th century France. Yeah, and Martin Luther on the right side. I'm sitting in Berlin in Germany. He is considered a truly big person, not only in German history, but first of all, by the Pope, he was considered heretic. That was the first approach to him and his teaching. It is hard to believe now when you see all the might and the prosperity that the Protestant church developed in with years, with hundreds of years. But it's true. Yeah, he was a heretic for a long time before it all became an established part of religion. Let's continue to we have the second slide, and actually here we see these are the heretics who were at the roots at the beginning of Sikh religion, which now involves 10 or even 12, 20 million people in the world. Yeah, but still, at the very beginning, they were punished. They were killed, as we see on this beautiful picture, and everybody probably knows this picture of golden. Uh, God, I forgot the word that is used in English for such a building. Help me, Susan.
What is
Yeah,
the picture? I have no idea. But,
the
what is it?
temple. Okay, okay,
A
it's
temple,
temple.
a mausoleum?
Yeah,
What?
yes, it's a golden temple, the famous Sikh golden temple. That's how it looks now. But it was a Sikhism was also a heresy, definitely at the beginning. So here I
Why
approach
a
more,
heresy? Why
yeah,
was this building a heresy?
what?
Why
Could
was
you,
it a heresy, this building?
no, not the building. I mean that nowadays it is an established religion. Yeah,
Yeah,
10 to
okay.
12 million people who are practicing it. But in the at the beginning, Islamic culture was not ready to accept it as it is. Also, we face with some kind of heresy punishments history, even in Buddhism, which is
Hmm.
noticed for being more or less peaceful with opponents and friendly to other opinions. Even there were times when heresy was not welcomed. But actually, the way our profile 5.1 understood in human design, for example, is a simple, effective solutions. Actually, behind this, that what at first can be considered as heresy, hides some new, effective, probably more effective approach to the situation we are dealing with, and that's what good heretic faithful or fearful could bring to the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I was thinking about this a little bit more. It's interesting that we talk about this as far as, people, it's almost like heretics are here to bring kind of an evolution about. And at first, people can really, um, they can either think they're demonic because it's something new and threatening, or they can think that they're savior, and so we get projected upon either as, something to be feared and to be who is a threat to the common establishment, or on the other hand, we can come in as somebody savior that can save everybody from all of these things. And as a person, as a heretic ourselves, we're here to fight against the status quo. That's just how we operate. But at the same time, it's hard for us because we're either seen in these two lights, and unless we can kind of deliver on what that projection is, like you said, we can be completely burned to the stake. So there's people that are heretics that come out very early, too early maybe, and they aren't offering that practical solution for people, and then they do get burned at the stake. And then after, there might be some other heretics that come in after them and establish that practical solution, and then they're raised up. So it's a very interesting time actually for heretics in general. We're both Aquarians, and we're born on the cross of revolution, and
Mhm.
Pluto's just entered Aquarius, and so and you can see that right now in our society. We're kind of at that edge where the things that have been working in the past are no longer working, and we're kind of in that transitional period. And so people that have come out with heresies have become, kind of demonized. And let's see who kind of comes up to the forefront after that to really bring in something new. It'll be interesting, right?
Mhm. It's nice that you mentioned the other sides of this projections field, which is always uh, how to the word superimposed on us. Yeah, so a lot of things are expected from us automatically. Yes, we appear somewhere like as heretics. But I also only want to add to it the things that came to my mind while studying this heresy problem, yeah, and the culture behind it. That generally the heresy appears there where we have an official mainstream. Yeah, there is a dominant religion. This is our way. We are all going in that direction. And automatically, the persons that have another opinion, other opinions, other points of view, or offering something new, uh, become heretics. And
Yeah.
now we live in a wonderful time. Well, these dominating mainstreams are changing, maybe becoming smaller. There are a lot of them. Now we know we are connected through the internet, through our culture, through communication, through everything, a means of transportation. And we see that actually there is no mainstream. There are rivers that are wider, there are smaller rivers, but all the rivers flow. And that's a nice time to be heretic. Most likely we wouldn't be burned at the stake physically. Let's try to escape it in other dimensions.
Well,
So
I guess you could say that, but you could also say that the West in general has been pushing in more and more to the mainstream. And we can include, the U.S. and all of the West that has been dominant for a while. The U.S. is specifically going through some major changes and will be going through some major changes as it has the superpower it's been. It's influenced so many places. So English has become a prominent language in many countries, and they have dominated
the
the
globe. Let's
capitalism
put
and the
it. Yeah.
globe. So I can
Mhm.
imagine there's been a lot of pushback because of that. And I'm certain that we'll be going through some changes and possibly diminishing sort of our superpower. I have no idea. I live in comfort in the US of A, but even here, it's no longer working the way it's supposed to be working. There's a very small percentage of people who benefit and profit from it, but it's all relative, right? For my life, I really benefit from certain institutional setups. Whereas I don't make a ton of money in relative sense, I do, compared to other countries. So it's an interesting time, and you're right. There's a lot of diversity out there, and it is a great time to be a heretic, depending on where you live. But
Mhm.
I personally love the diversity that we have. And whereas I would like a more peaceful existence aside from people that are different, I do love the difference, and I don't necessarily want it to be homogenous, but I would like the violence to stop. I would like there's to be respect of difference, and so it's a challenging time, I think.
Yeah, you're right. So we see it every day. Like I do not even want to elaborate on Russian use, for example. Yeah. So it's
Oh
kind of
gosh, yes.
challenging. We feel it. Yeah, we feel it.
Right now, yeah, it's
Oh,
very challenging
yeah.
with all of the things, and the eclipse that is coming is bringing in all that energy. I'm curious to see what our conversation how our conversation is going to develop over the next few weeks. It's a very intense time. We had
Mhm.
a big event in the U.S. just recently with a collapse of a bridge, and there's more to
Mhm.
come, I'm
Yes.
sure. So, yeah. So, are we done with this part? Do you want to move on to the next part?
Yeah, let's
Okay.
move on, I suppose. Yeah.
So,
Or do you think we have to describe more in details the five? But I think everybody, with the help of Google or Perplexity, can Google the 5-1 profile human design. It is nowadays available easily, all this detailed informations in case you need it.
yeah, I think we were just wanting to bring up what is a heretic in general. There are other types of heretics. We're focusing on our profile, which is the 5-1, specifically in this episode, but there are many types of heretic profiles that are not 5-1s, but
Mhm.
I think I just wanted to really describe it more simplistically. And we, of
Mhm.
course, will talk about it as we go. We wanted to talk about some famous heretics, and specifically around astrology and human design,
Mhm.
I think. So, what I
Yeah.
really wanted to start with, and these are all 5-1 heretics, and I wanted to start with Dane Rudhyar, because he is really one of the most influential astrologers for modern astrology. He was born in 1895, and he's the pioneer of modern transpersonal astrology. And a lot of astrologers were influenced by Dane Rudhyar, even if they weren't directly influenced. He really influenced modern astrology specifically. And he was a heretic. I'm going to talk a little bit about his younger years, because I think it really colors kind of how
Mhm.
he was brought into astrology. And it kind of it showcases a lot of who he was. So at the age of 12, a severe illness and surgery disabled him, and he turned to music and intellectual development to compensate for his lack of physical agility.
Mhm.
At age 16, Rudhyar first realized two things which conditioned his entire life and work. Time is cyclic, and cyclicity governs civilizations as well as aspects of existence. Two, Western civilization is coming to what could be symbolically called the autumn phase of its cycle of existence. I think that we can kind of agree that with mass extinction and the rise, the population has grown so much. I think we can all
Mhm.
agree that is true. Such realizations, which were largely spontaneous and intuitive, though influenced by his readings of Nietzsche, made Rudhyar feel the urge to divorce himself from Europe and to seek a new world, a land where he could sow himself as a seed, carrying within him the harvest of whatever was viable and constructive in the European past. The ideal of the seed man thus rose in his consciousness, dominating his thinking and his actual living. He was born Daniel Chenevier. I'm not sure if I pronounced that
Mhm.
correctly. He's of Celtic and Norman ancestry. He was born in France in 1895. And his birth name was given up in 1917, a few months after reaching New York City. So, what I
Mhm.
wanted to point out really quickly before I talk about how he got involved in astrology was that in the human design chart, I see this leaving behind his old identity, coming to the US and taking on a new identity in his open G. The G is about our identity, and people with an undefined G are flexible in their identity. They don't have a very fixed way of expressing it, and so this is very symbolic of that. Don't you think, Tatiana? That
Yes, I agree totally. Yeah, so like
okay.
he changed his, let's put it, he took a new form. Yeah.
Yeah, he took a new form. And then I also wanted to point out that how it shows up in his astrology chart, his south node is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is in Pisces in his third house. And Mercury can be thought of as a seed because it is our form of our intellectual processing and our communication. So I thought that was very interesting how that showed up. And his illness is specifically, he's got a lot of planets, Pluto, Mars, and Neptune in the sixth house. It trines Chiron, which is our wound. And so that,
Mhm.
and the sixth house is our health house. So that's very symbolic of his past, of his physical um, problems early in his life, and it's also mirrored here in his channel of struggle.
Mhm.
And it's in his design, so it's a physical struggle.
Yeah.
So I thought
I
that was
also.
really interesting.
Mhm. I also want to notice that as a man, he was an emotional manifester, but he was like a truly emotional manifester. We see the two manifesting channels connecting to his throat. He was enormously powerful one. Yeah, I would put it
Yes.
like this. Even though with open ego, but open ego, and open G center probably gave him the possibility to adapt to the situation he had to face in his life. But
Yeah,
it
it's very
definitely was not
interesting.
simple.
All of these people have an open sacral, and they all have a lack of earth, which is the earth is what stabilizes us. It
Mhm.
is our material. It's what provides us material in our life. So it's interesting that that's kind of symbolic of that open sacral, of not having consistent access to the earth element, which
Mhm.
keeps us kind of more stable and provides resources for us. And it's very interesting. He was a prolific writer, a painter, and a musician, which shows up in this 1222 manifester. He wrote so many. He produced so much in his
Mhm.
life, and so that's very manifestor oriented too.
Mhm.
So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how he got into astrology, and we'll talk about his chart a little bit more. But Rudhyar learned astrology during a period when he was also studying the psychological writings of Carl young, and
Mm-hmm.
he began to think in terms of bringing astrology and Jungian psychology together. Rudhyar also cites Jan Smut's book, Holism and Evolution, as an influence. The marriage between astrology and depth psychology overcame some basic problems, including astrology's deterministic approach to life and the trouble of designating an agreeable agent to produce the astrological effects. Rudhyar postulated that the stars did not cause the effects seen in human life, but were pictures synchronistically aligned to human beings. They detailed psychological forces working in individuals, but did not override human freedom in responding to those forces, he said. At first, he called his new interpretation harmonic astrology, and as the ideas matured, renamed it humanistic astrology. The subject of his monumental volume, The Astrology of Personality, published in 1936. Now, I wanted to point out that Dane Rudhyar came as a heretic to
Mm-hmm.
challenge the normal studies of astrology up until then was traditional astrology, and it was very deterministic type of astrology. And what's interesting about him is that it wasn't something that a lot of people today think astrology is that we use the planets like will determine our behavior, but it's really just that it's just really used as a symbolic of what's going on inside of us. Some people can say that it's both symbolic and material. You can argue that it is symbolic, but it also has some deterministic elements to it. But he came in to challenge that. And what I thought was very interesting was that his book came out 6 years after Pluto was discovered. And what we'll see about the other human design when we look at Ra's kind of creation of human design, and then the evolutionary astrologer Jeff Green, they really focused on Pluto as becoming, this more nine-centered development in humankind, rather than the traditional astrology, which really stopped with Saturn. They really stopped. They did not look at the planets beyond Saturn. They do now a little bit, but it's very focused on all of the personal planets, and up until Saturn and Uranus and Neptune and Pluto are called outer planets, and they didn't really consider those because they're not seen in the sky as influences of us as much as the personal planets in Saturn. So he did talk about Pluto, but he's not known for that. But he is known for adding the spiritual and the psychological to astrology. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. Tatiana, do you have anything else to say about that?
So I only want to also to add this gate 16 line 5 in his Pluto. It shows like all the things that he managed uh, to to achieve in his life, and all the practices that he reached. So this is his true nature. Let's put it like this. All the music and astrology and everything. He learned so much and managed uh, to be involved in all these different things and be more or less, let's put it, successful, or how to know, so developed in all these spheres, and he managed to do it. So that was his true nature. And also the 5 line, yeah, line 5,
Yeah.
also here.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because when I was looking at these influences of myself, and how they kind of match up, some of the things match up to our chart. So we both have the south node in 16.5, and so it's like, you are usually drawn to people who have similarities to your chart, and I always find those patterns very interesting. And the 16.5 is always looking for patterns, trying to look
Yes,
for patterns, and trying to make sense out of them.
enthusiastically. Yeah, yeah.
And
With
also
enthusiasm.
Yeah, his
It's good.
north node is in the line 21 and gate 22, but in Pisces 21 degrees of Pisces, and that's where our Jupiter is exactly. And he is ruled by Jupiter. Both his ascendant is in Sagittarius, and his north node is ruled by Jupiter, which is in the seventh house. And he had all of these astrologers had a lot of relationships, but he really, his he had a lot of people involved in and supporting his work. When he first came to the U.S., he was pretty much destitute, and he relied upon a lot of people to support him and artists. He created a lot of groups and institutions and worked with a variety of people in his life to manifest what he needed to manifest. And Jupiter is also, he's got the gate 11, the teacher, Jupiter's a huge influence in his life. And all of these astrologers, human design, what would you call them? Creators, originators, had a huge Jupiter influence, the teacher, spiritual knowledge. They came into this life with spiritual knowledge. And so I thought that was really interesting. And then even his south node is ruled by Jupiter. Mercury is ruled by Jupiter. So he's got a lot of just amazing knowledge. He's got a Jupiter square to his nodes. So Jupiter is highly influential in his life. And if you look into his works, you can also understand all of the contributions that he made to astrology, and especially from a spiritual perspective. I also wanted to point out that when he published this Astrology of Personality, Neptune was transiting his south node and Saturn was transiting his north node. So it was in opposition when he produced that book. And then transiting south node was conjunct his Jupiter, and Pluto was in the 8th house, which is the psychological house. And so I thought that was very interesting because he is influenced by Neptune. Neptune is on his descendants, very important in his chart, and the Neptune is a co-ruler of Pisces. And Saturn is in Scorpio. So he was definitely influenced psychologically and was born to really investigate all of the psychological and depth that he investigated in his life. He was born to do that. So yeah, I mean,
he
I think
was born in times where psychology was like established and developed. Yeah, that was like extremely trendy, like all the IT stuff now.
Right. Yeah, I would have loved. I sent you that the script that he had when he was talking about how he was talking about that other psychologist, but it's really long. But it was such an amazing kind of overview on psychology and the heretics of psychology. As people came out, like with Freud was a 3-5 heretic, and he was trying to challenge the deterministic approach to astrology of being good or bad, and so he was trying to show proof that there was more to it. But he in himself kind of was his own heretic, and people responded to him in a negative way. And then this other psychologist was also considered a heretic of his time, because he was also challenging some of that. I can't go into that too much because it's too long, but it was such a fascinating study to talk about that, because I had never even understood that myself, about how religion was very present in our psychology and how we viewed certain people. Like some people, like Joan of Arc, were considered spiritual and high-minded, and she was a heretic at the time, but at the same time she could have been considered crazy, but she wasn't. She was considered she was considered spiritual, and so I think they were trying to figure out, well, what's this high-minded spiritual influences versus somebody who's schizophrenic and crazy? Like, what's the difference? And so he was talking a
Is
lot
there a
about that, which
difference
is fascinating.
actually?
Is there a difference? which
Yeah,
I
yeah. Mhm.
which I still it's really hard for me to even grapple with, because here I am talking about astrology in a mainstream. I mean, it's a lot more mainstream now. It used to be a lot more mainstream and considered, you were in the high echelons of certain parts in certain historical aspects. You were more in the higher echelons of society, and believed in astrology. Now there's a lot um, of misunderstandings about astrology, and people who think that people who do astrology are crazy. So I kind of grapple with that myself, and my own
Mhm.
spiritual beliefs as well.
Yeah, this is a stigma that is, but same thing. This whole situation regarding your psyche is also kind of stigma. If you're not, if you're diverse from an understanding of normal. I just bought the book, the myth of normal, and my plan is to read it, even though it is huge, because it's like actually a myth. But still, we try to present everything that there is a right way, there is a scientific approach, and all these astrologists or all these people who are differ from us, who do not understand the world. We may some kind of mainstream understand it. We are back to the to heresy. Actually,
Yeah,
I do feel it like that. A lot of things in psychology look more than mystically, like axiomas. We simply think that it works like this, especially in child psychology. Like, who actually can definitely define how the child feels when he is like 1 month old or two? Yes, there are some experiments that have proofs, and there is also cognitive behavioral approach. Yeah, there more or less everything is confirmed. Yes, that's why this approach is so popular here in Germany, for example. But there are a lot of other spheres in psychology when some things are like mostly religious. Yeah, the very
yeah,
roots, the very beginning, the fundamental things look more like religious stuff, not like a scientific one.
I know. And the whole aspect of scientific proof. There's been a lot of people that have been heretics in their time, because I was listening to another podcast where we were talking about science and how science should be challenging the consensus, and with a hypothesis that they're just curious to see if it's true, and so they don't go into something with a predeterministic idea of their hypothesis. They're actually challenging the truth, and then later, yes, they come up with evidence that supports the truth. But even that is very wiggly, because you have a lot of studies that have come out, and they've been shown to be proven to be true, and later there's problems with the study, or there's something else that they didn't understand
Mhm.
about it, that something else was revealed later to be true, and that other study was false. So for me, there's a lot of wiggly room and around what's science and what's not. It's really about consensus, more than anything, and especially around psychology. Like, I don't really understand why people today think, oh, well, so psychology is scientific versus astrology is not scientific. I mean, I understand the basic reasons why they prescribe that, but a lot of the things that they think is scientific really isn't. And it's just, people accept that it's a scientific, because
Mhm.
they've, as a society, we've agreed, even though it doesn't have those strict experiments and peer reviewed research and all of those things. So it's kind of a wiggly line. And I also have really taken to heart people that they try to prove that astrology is scientific, and I don't actually care as much about that. I think a lot of people think, no, it's an art, and it's not scientific in the ways that you think about science. And you don't really have to think of it as like something that you prove or not. And I like, that's what I like about human design, because it's like, okay, it's an experiment. And it's a personal experiment, really, even though some people think, oh, well, Ra said this and this is true. Ra said, don't believe me, experiment for yourself. So now that we've talked about that, we should probably go into talking about Ra.
Yeah, and thank you for this wonderful idea of considering human design, astrology, all and the related stuff as an art. Then we do not need a proof. Yeah, we can leave this art. Yeah, we can continue with it.
Yes.
We can prove it in our life.
Right. It's a mix of art and science. Okay. So Ra is very influential in both of our lives, and I'm putting him as second, even though Jeff Green was born 2 years earlier than Ra. They're very similar times of birth, and I just wanted to talk about the sameness. Actually, I just wanted to compare their Dane Rudhyar's and Ra's ascendant are very near each other, as you can see, just a few degrees apart. Ra is definitely influenced by Jupiter. It's in his first house. They're both manifestors, but Ra is a splenic manifestor versus Dane Rudhyar was an emotional manifestor. Do you want to talk about manifestors and what that means? Because I kind of glossed over it in my last slide with
Okay,
talking
just
about Dane.
let's briefly put it like manifestos. They approximately 8% of global population, and these are actually the people who are in this life to push it forward, to bring the energy of life, to develop it, to unfold new situations, new options, new communities, or whatever. They are actually here to manifest all the stuff that is written, like you have to manifest your ideas, you have to bring them to life. That this all is true for only for manifestors. We are rest of humanity have to be invited, for example, like projectors, or to respond to the situations like generators, or reflect. Yeah, like reflectors should do it ideal way, but manifestors are this strong force of development in our life. And previously all our civilization was actually built by manifestors, ruled by manifestors, and it is like designed for manifestors on top, and rest of the population uh, brought to this form of pyramid. Yeah, and they
Yeah.
are on the top of this pyramid. So let's say also a lot of violence comes from them, from angry manifestors. When a manifestor has problems with living his true person and true life, true personality and true life, he's like really bitter and angry. So he's angry, and this anger uh, populates our reality until now. Yeah, we can see it definitely.
Yeah.
But even
Good.
though the times are changing. But at the other, so just one last remark, from other side, only manifestor, the one like Ra or Dane Rudhyar could survive in circumstances like this. Yeah, and only such kind of people with this aura that is covered by Teflon, let's put it like, not the Teflon, so, but resistant to any penetration, to any situation, that still can survive and move on, which is for us, for example, personally, would be truly hard. So
Yeah.
we have to be. So I'm really happy that he was a manifestor and he survived the experience he was led to, and brought human design to this planet.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that a lot of, like, if you wanted to talk about manifestors, a lot of them are the people who would be your entrepreneurs, the people that will bring forth a manifestation of something that they desire, come hell or high water. They will do it because that's just what they're designed to do, and so they are able to, I guess, weather the storms and get other people to work for them and create. There's a lot of slaves that they've created, the generators that have a joy of working or always going, going, going. They can create slaves out of that energy, and not self, what you would consider, like you described, those angry manifestors have created a lot of misery in our world because of that, behavior of creating something and manifesting something, and using all of the power of the generators to do what they want, to go after what they want because they need help for their system, or what have you. I'm not saying that that's every manifestor, of course it's not, but that's kind of the historical precedence of we have a lot of anger in our world, and a lot of misery, because people are not living out their true purpose and what we're here for. um, so
Yes.
Ra, I would love for you to talk a little. Oh, I just also wanted to point out that Dane and Ra's Jupiters were exactly opposite. And so I thought that was a very interesting point, and commonality, because when you look at Sagittarius in general, it's ruled by Jupiter, and you look at that opposition of Gemini, which is it's basically ideology. Jupiter is very much an ideology, and Gemini is more mental, and Jupiter is a more expansive, and it's about truth, and it's about and one is ruled by fire, and one is ruled by actually just going out there and doing something that's very adventurous, and one is more cerebral and about ideas, and it's more mental, and then the Sagittarius is just it's going to be very vocal, and just going to go out and actually do something, rather than the Gemini, which is just going to think about it. I mean, they're both manifestors, but I just thought it was interesting that it was that opposition. And our nodes are in, like you said, like it's
16.5.
Gemini 16.5, and it's about the skills. It's about acquiring the
Feels
skills and looking at the patterns and understanding the patterns. And the opposition of us is Sagittarius, which is learning thing or focusing on the bigger picture. And in our human design gates is about focusing on the details and intuition and learning and things like that. But it's more it's a different type of energy to manifest. But I wanted to give it up to you, Tatiana, to talk about Ra's life a little bit, his how he came to human design, because you studied that and did a presentation on it, and what his earlier life looked like.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. Yeah, so it was truly interesting for me personally to understand his path to human design, because actually, like, there is knowledge and we are studying it. And but how did he manage? What kind of path he made? And actually, it is something truly interesting. So I would say he was a mystic himself from the very beginning, even when he didn't receive himself like a person with any kind of mystical approach. As he says, he first started to read any kind of esoterical books on any kind of esoterics 2 years before the experiment. So like when he was already a grown-up person, more so he was approaching his opposition, his Uranus opposition, so the middle point of his life. And before it, he never touched it. But let me put it like this: as I checked, and luckily I was able to find some history of his family on the web, and most likely, I suppose, like I'm 99% correct. His father's roots are from Galicia, a part that previously, before the World War I, belonged to Hungarian Empire. Now, actually, this part is located in Ukraine, after all the perturbations that happened in the 20th century. Luckily, his grandfather escaped, so he moved before even the World War One to United States, and somehow they did it to Canada, even though most of Galician Jews actually were moving to United States. Yeah. And it is also was interesting for me to know that, for example, so this was a quite a lively region with a lot of trade routes between Russian Empire and Austro-Hungarian Empire. Actually, his grandfather was born in Brody, and Brody is like directly on the border. And it means, and it was a Porto Franco zone when you can, when where you are freed from excessive taxes and so on. So the population was quite active with any kind of exchange, cultural, material, trade, whatever comes. Yeah, so it was a lively region, and the people who were especially a Jewish population, were really active, educated. You had to learn to know a lot of different languages to trade. So Ukrainian, Russian, German, Polish, most likely. Then you also would have uh, Господи, боже мой, how do we say it? How do we say the Jewish language that was used at that time? So it's like, sorry, it's quite a
Hebrew?
normal word of telling. Hebrew, not
Hebrew.
Hebrew, the other one, the other Jewish, the
Oh,
old Jewish dialect based on a German,
oh, yeah, yeah,
on a German
yeah.
language. Yeah.
Yiddish.
Yiddish, yeah, Yiddish. Yeah, you have so we say in English. So also Yiddish. So you an enormous amount of languages that you have to manage to reach prosperity or to find your way in such places. Even though these were small states, small cities or villages, but still in such a position. And when Halician Jews partially moved to Odessa, a huge port, actually the biggest port of empire of Russian Empire and Soviet Union until the fall of Soviet Union. Uh, when they moved to Odessa, part of them, they were considered so well educated that in general it improved the quality of Odessa Jewish community. So distinguished person, so good and educated and developed was that population. So that's a part of his that these are his roots. And what is also important to mention, that Hasidism was also not far from this region, and the root of Hasidic movements and all these teachers and tzaddiks and the persons who were influential. This was also somewhere in this soup. Yeah, a lot of trade people, but a lot of religious movements and spiritual experiencing of God. Yeah, the way that Hasids approach uh, this divine situation with the divine source is similar a little bit to the one of Sufi teachings. Yeah, like the real love towards the creation and the creator, and this personal experience of love to the God, and this possibility to bring it to your everyday life, like a enormous amount of mysticism in your everyday life, and your need to have a teacher to grow yourself, a teacher who leads the community to not only to prosperity, actually to the better knowledge of God, and better possibility to bring love to this world, to each other, to build this community with love and to develop together with your teacher. Yeah, that's the ground. This all is coded, I'm definitely in his body graph, in his genes. It couldn't disappear simply. So this all he received from his father's side, all this cultural influence, cultural and genetic heritage. Yeah, and somehow he was brought up, I think, not that close to all these religious roots. I suppose his father was already present as a member of family when they moved and left this border region. Then, but actually, then family was rich, so he was upper middle class. He had all the possibilities to receive good education, and he positioned himself as a businessman until he was like approximately 35 years old. He had business. He was involved in really modern stuff, production, publishing. All the cutting edge technologies were known to him just because you have to use them to produce TV show or whatever, yeah, or to publish Men's Health in Canada. So that was the level he was working at. When I first heard it, like actually, nobody, almost nobody mentioned it in human design community. Once he told it, like I was a publisher of Men's Health magazine in Canada. It is
Mm-hmm.
quite the same. So I
Oh yeah.
suppose he's not lying when he's telling that he had a lot of money. And one day he left this all. He had his love, his passion for black color. He had a black house with a black table and a black dishes and everything was black. So he was extremely stylish. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
The times the 70s. So yeah, and but he left his life, simply disappeared. And what is that's how what reminds me of this Jewish mysticism and mysticism actually in general. Yeah, you are doesn't describe it like I was called to.
Yeah.
He simply opened the door and left his life. That's what he did. He took some cash and documents, and that's it. The
Mm-hmm.
person who was in his third marriage, had a child, a small one, I suppose, and he was like established, cool businessman, smoking joints all the time, as I
Doing
understood.
drugs. Yeah. Yeah. He
Yeah,
did a lot of
the
drugs
drugs.
in his life.
I Yeah, but I suppose the main part of drug story comes later. Until that moment, mm, he made himself acquainted with alcohol and marijuana. He
Mm.
was Sometimes he mentions it like he was doing it since he was a teenager. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
brutal manifestors. Yes, that's
Yeah.
how it happens sometimes to them. Yeah, and then he disappeared. The way he describes it, the way he found his way to Ibiza, is like a chain of events that you cannot even predict. You cannot expect such a thing. That one person told him to this, and he was navigating it like a real mystic. Like he do not say, like he doesn't say I saw it as a sign. He simply moved on. Like the young guy in hostel in Amsterdam tells him that like Ibiza is your place. Ibiza is your place. You have to go there. Yeah, and
The
he goes there.
splenic. He was listening to a
Yeah,
splenic. Yeah.
yeah.
The
He
spleen.
he was listening to his. Yeah, you're right. You're right. That's how it all unfolded. Then we can so then comes a part where he used a lot of drugs, mostly psychedelical ones. I do not think he was using heavy stuff like heroin or whatever, but he was definitely trying to ruin his established life model, not like consciously. It happens by himself. When he describes it, it was quite natural. Yeah, it
Ketamine
wasn't
is
like
ketamine is pretty heavy, but that's what he was using when he
mhm.
heard the voice. It was ketamine. Yeah.
Mm. I was surprised that they had such an amount, but maybe it was allowed to buy it like easily in Ibiza, because this was a whole community using ketamine
Yeah.
almost on a daily basis or something like that. So this was a way to disconnect your body from your psyche. Like actually, as we know, ketamine is still probably used as during the operations in medicine. Yeah, to disconnect you from your body, just to receive a possibility to have.
Vets use it a lot. Veterinarians use
Mhm,
it a lot more than
mhm.
regular doctors. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe previously it was mainly used. I suppose once in my youth, I was also so it was used to definitely ketamine, and I had some kind of almost mystical experience.
Oh yeah.
So now,
Wow.
but
I've never had
nowadays
it.
it is not used for that purpose anymore. And after all and this process, it took years actually. So we almost going fast forward to 87 when he
Yeah.
received the revelation
It
and he
was right
received
after
human design.
his Uranus opposition. He went
Mhm,
to Ibiza in 83. In 83 to 85 was his pre voice experience. He had his
mhm,
Uranus opposition at the end of 1986, and then his experience
mhm,
with the voice happened in 1987. I have some, I focused on the
mhm,
astrology chart and what was happening in his astrology
mhm.
chart. So yeah, so he was just right after his. And do you want to talk a little bit about what happens in your Uranus opposition? I know you said it's the midpoint of your life, but
Yeah.
do you understand that a little bit more to talk about to give everybody an explanation about the Uranus
Mhm.
opposition?
So actually, this, as you said, it is a middle point of our life when we preliminary are ready to stop learning new things, to stop living our experience, like a running cycle for 84 years. Yeah, so let's say it is a middle point between 42, 44 years for everybody. For each of us, it is different. And it is a turn from being a pupil of life to start to approach to a teacher role. Just you are starting to summarize, but I suppose you're starting to manifest the signs of the way that you are better go than not in your second part of your life. So you have a basis. You studied a lot. Now this is a turn when you go in the direction that is you start first to manifest your cross. Yeah, so the main thing that is incorporated in your consciousness and your chart, yeah, your life cross. Uh, you start to approach the purpose that brought you here to this life. And actually, as I heard from Tatiana, my teacher in human design, it could be quite a shocking situation. So in a experience confirms it totally. Yeah, because more shocking experience, it's really hard to imagine. But I would say, like in my own life, it was also kind of shocking recognition of what I'm here for. As it actually, so I was like months in a kind of Buddhic state of mind. uh, it was like I know it happened to me before, but it was again and with such a strong power. It showed already at that moment which road I have to
Yeah,
follow, even though I didn't do it few years I hesitated. And Ra,
yeah,
that's the magic of
same
his
way.
design.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was straightforward with it. Yeah, he didn't have any obstacles on his way, and he was brutal enough to survive during his experience.
Well,
Do
you
you want
can
us
see
to?
you can
Mhm,
see that in his chart. So he's got this Mars, Saturn, and Pluto in his
mhm,
chart that is squaring his nodes, and that is a
mhm,
very powerful energy. It's squaring his nodes and is also trining his. He was born in a almost a new moon when the moon was forming to this. He was approaching the sun to form a new moon, and it's trining that energy, and so that's a lot of very powerful and it's ruled by his sun. You know, the Mars,
mhm,
Saturn, and Pluto up here is ruled by his sun, but it's really about the power, the right use of power. And so he had a lot of access to that, and many lifetimes of working with this energy. This was a very crucial period, a life cycle for him. And so you could see that brutalness of his wake up call with the voice, the experience of the voice. It is Uranus opposition. Yeah. So go ahead. Sorry, I just wanted to
mhm.
point that
Yeah,
out.
no, no, it's okay. I'm just wanting to some we can easily summarize all my attempts to describe how huge his esoterical mystical heritage was, but it is all stated in his design sun. Yeah, 61 1.
Yeah.
occult knowledge. Yeah, that's his nature. He received it. Okay, he lived his life, but he received also some input from ancestors' side, simply from the line I
It
was
woke up.
talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it simply woke up, and it was like when you read the documents, all the stories that he tells, like you feel like his body decided and his body moved, and he was not standing that much in the way. He was trying to move him away to let this design to lead him, to bring him to the point where he received the revelation. And should we describe in details what happened to him? I suppose that this encounter with a voice on YouTube could be a good, the film, 1 hour film, 1 hour more film that describes, he himself describes his experience with the voice and how
Yeah.
he received this revelation and what happened during these days. It could be
Yeah, we
easily
could.
found on the internet.
Yeah, I've read the story, but I haven't watched that video. And it is a very interesting experience,
Mhm,
mystical experience, and you know, it delivered to him all of the materials of the human design system, which he developed over time. It gave him the basic output of what he developed over time, and that took a while for him to develop the whole system. But yeah,
mhm.
he received that knowledge of the human
Into his
design and
body,
how life
actually,
started.
yeah.
Yeah, into his body. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
And he had to extract it somehow, and that's why the knowledge was evolving constantly. uh, and there are some phases in his way from when, after he came to Ibiza and before he received the revelation. It also was a kind of development and unfolding of all these mystical steps toward the revelation he received. It is
yeah.
also really interesting, but maybe we can make another
Yeah, I
podcast
mean, it's a
series. Yeah,
long
on.
so what I'm recognizing here is these three people are very and interesting and just fascinating stories, all three of them, and it could happen. You could create several episodes just on these single
Mhm,
people in their life, and especially we're very interested in human design here, and so I'm sure we'll be talking about it as we go, but we just kind of wanted to talk about these influences and how they were all heretics,
mhm,
and what they had in common, and why they're heretical. But for Ra, his hereticism was also challenging, astrology itself, basically,
mhm,
and challenging the ways that astrology, or his knowledge of astrology, was put forth, which was what he called seven centered, which basically my understanding of seven centered was, we is basically stopped at Saturn, and once we discovered Pluto, we opened up to our nine centered potential. Um, but yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about a little bit about seven centered versus nine centered and what that means.
okay, so previously until the, I forgot the year. Sorry.
What?
So we changed. I forgot the year. When has it changed to nine centered? 1614 or I
Yeah,
don't
it was
know.
like after Jesus's time, basically. There
No,
was
later. Mhm.
yeah, so
Yeah,
so basically it basically was, it was a design change in our body,
Mhm,
he posits, from what he
mhm,
heard from this voice, was that we were
mhm.
seven centered, and that reflects,
Okay.
I mean, that reflects a little bit in our awareness, or conscious awareness, and how we developed our consciousness. But do you have any we could talk about that later, it's a
Yeah,
huge
but
topic.
no. Just the main point of this, so seven centers. It is more similar to classical chakra systems as we know it, even though it is a new one figured out by Europeans, and that is not traditional to yogic, to Indian culture. Actually, it is how the people from England understood it's,
Yeah,
yoga and its teaching.
exactly.
But still, but still. So for Raf in human design, this seven-centered being is centered on survival, And this is the main point. A nine-centered being is not to survive on this plane, but to flourish and to experience life. That's the main difference. And we are still, the whole humanity is still trying to live like a seven-centered beings did it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the idea is that we are totally changed already and we are different. Somehow evolutionally, we are a new step forward in development, but mostly we are trying to live the seven-centered life, concentrating our thoughts and our life purpose around money and survival, and
Yeah.
bringing forward our genetic, and that's it. Cool.
Yeah, and so we have the potential to be nine centered, but we're
Hmm.
not there yet. But the evolution, I think, with the discovery of Pluto, kind of opened our consciousness to it. So, the ability to observe ourselves and to to be conscious witnesses of our life. It kind of opened up our abilities to move toward nine-centeredness, although we haven't quite done that. And a lot of the spiritual teachers, I think, have attempted
Hmm.
to make people more aware of the potential, but only a very small percentage of people. And if you study Gurdjieff, you kind of in his theory, it's about the balance, and they're just not, it's not possible for people, for too much people to be consciously aware. For that's a whole other story, Gurdjieff and his theories. But there's a balance in life of the people who are consciously aware versus those who are running off of a program and not consciously aware. And there's only a Ra also mentions this, 4%, um
Hmm.
4% of 4%, or kind of can reach that potential of being aware human beings, um and tapping into the power of not letting our minds rule the show.
Hmm.
But that's a whole other topic that I need
Yeah,
to
maybe we can talk about, so the whole idea is like we have to bring the energy from our lower level chakras to our head, and the mind was a ruler for seven-centered being. It was quite a useful thing, yeah, to survive, but not
yeah,
anymore. Yeah, not anymore,
right,
and mind shouldn't be playing such a role, but it still is playing. Like it
right,
looks
okay.
like.
So I was so he came and developed this system called the Human Design System, which is a really, when you look at it from a knowledge perspective, it's a synthesis of many different spiritual modalities. The Kabbalistic tree of life, the chakra
Mhm.
system, astrology, the I Ching.
I
It's a
think, yeah.
beautiful synthesis of all of those. It's very complex, even though people think it's much simpler than astrology. I think astrology has access to all this information, but it's a very much more in depth study, and human design is as well, but it orients you in the body. And so some
Mhm.
people see it as a more of a
Mhm.
simple way to look at things. I respect both systems. I am in love with the knowledge, spiritual
Mhm.
modalities, and what it can show us, and how it can reveal our nature in a way that provides acceptance and understanding of ourselves and each other. That's the biggest thing that I think it brings to
Mhm.
my life, is just the acceptance. Oh, that is me, and it's okay to be
Yeah.
this person. Instead of trying to be and mimic other people who've told me that I need to be a certain way. It's just like, no, okay,
Mhm.
this is me, and that's powerful, and that's wonderful. We each have
Yeah,
our
that's the
parts to
nature.
play, in life,
Mhm.
and we can't all be the same. That would be silly. It's just like when I go out for my walks and I see all of the beautiful diversity that's still there, and it's going away. I just love all of the nuances of nature and what the fruits of nature and animals and things like that. And so when I think about it from a human perspective, I love that too, about different types of people. So I wanted to talk about a little bit. He had his experience in January 1987. He had his Uranus opposition right before that, and the North Node and Mars were right on his Moon Sun conjunction, which trined the Mars, Saturn, and Pluto energy up here, and Uranus was approaching his Jupiter. So he was going through some change and upgrading his knowledge. And Neptune was also in his first house. So it's definitely all of these, when you study astrology and you look at cycles, you're like, oh my God, it is so timed, all of these things. When you understand the symbology of it and you look at the cycles and you see how exact things are when certain specific life events happen, it puts me in awe each time.
You're right.
And then I also wanted to point out about him, because I think it's really interesting from the astrology chart. He's Jupiter ruled, but Venus is the ruler of his North Node. It's in the sixth house, and the sixth house is also the house of work, and it's about knowledge. Gemini is about knowledge and his love of work in his later life. He developed so much of this knowledge in the second part of his life, and actually it grew over his lifetime to where he eventually started. It was the early ages of the internet, and at first he didn't have a lot of followers, but he created this whole school and system and had videos on the internet at the very beginning of the internet, developed this TV show. That was his talent, his broadcast talent. And he was one of the first people with his partners to develop this school and the system, and a lot of his followers. And this Venus is his love of work, and it's also his North Node is in the fifth house, and he was very much, and it was in Taurus. So it's like you could tell his future direction was about being your own individual, and also about the form. And Taurus is all about the form, and the fifth house is all about the individual and the creative energy and the creativeness of the self. And he was also his opposite view was power, and he all of this energy up here was always flipping him back and forth, like they say, like he says, your motivation flips back and forth between his personal view versus his power view, and that was this energy. It's the right use of power, and he really talked a lot about in his system is about, I do not want to be ruled by, do you want to be the sheep or do you want to be the wolf? I am not going to be ruled by somebody else, by this mind that's telling me all of these things that, that you need to do, and your shoulds and coulds and morality. It was really much about coming into your own authority, which is very much symbolic of Mars, Saturn, and Pluto, your own authority, the right use of power, and how we should all be embracing our individuality and our individual self, and not be conditioned by society and going and being ruled by what somebody else says that we should do, and all the tribal energy that was and the tribal, but also the collective that was telling us, what we should and shouldn't do with our life, all of that conditioning. So I thought that was interesting.
Just a small notice that he started this remote education programs in the era when nobody was even thinking about it in that way. But he created everything, Jovian archive, and so he was a pioneer even in that, and how to translate the knowledge to the world. Yeah, and now we are all dealing with that stuff. You can learn almost anything online. But when he started it, and especially I suppose any kind of mystical experiences or communities, New Age, religious, they were only approaching to this tool, and he used the knowledge of his past life and implemented it so effectively that we are lucky to have all these materials, even a 1 hour movie describing in details by the person who survived through this experience. The experience itself is like Moses who's telling in details what happened to him on
Yeah.
the day of revelation.
Yeah, and he was he was initiator, he was a powerful Aries. His Mercury was at the very beginning of Aries. So he's a very pioneering in that way. And he was just an amazing person, amazing, powerful manifester. Not emotional. He had an open solar plexus, and he talks a lot about how he was conditioned by emotional people and how hard that was for him. And then he also has that completely open sacral, where he's mirroring other people's energy all the time, and how also equally hard that was. And then this open root, and I you'll also see Jeff Green has an open root, but Jeff Green is a projector. But I thought it was very interesting because it feels like to me, and I want to kind of get your opinion on this, that open root people can have a lot of problems with their health. Have you heard about that? Or
So actually, as I notice in my everyday life, yeah, I could put it like this, just because they receive a lot of tension and a lot of pressure from us, from people whose root is defined. Yeah, and they
yeah,
have to deal with us, and they have to receive this stressful input from our side, yeah, from society, and also from society side, from this homogenized, uh, how to say, influence to do it, just do it, survive, go forward, do it, and just do it. Yeah,
yeah,
even though, even when you have to do it in your own way, and you have to
yeah,
learn how to behave yourself properly. But as we see, Ra was so strong in his impulses, unconscious. Yeah, so
yeah,
luckily for us all, that he managed to navigate this difficulty. I had a lot of stuff, and I have a mental projector here in my family, and sometimes she's suffering when I'm too stressful. So I'm trying
like
to protect from my energy.
my my son also has an open mind and an open root, and they definitely have a different way of moving, and it has to really be cognizant of allowing him to take his time. People get
Mhm.
frustrated. People with defined roots get very frustrated with open roots because they don't move quickly, and they just don't have the same capacity to move as quick. They really
Mhm.
need to take their time, and so I think that's where you can have that dysfunction, because they need to move in their own rhythm, and we put a lot of pressure on them to move quicker than they should, just like any other defined, you know a defined
Mhm.
center versus undefined center. But he also had this wide open sacral, and when you have like no he has receptive gates off of these other, but he also he had a receptive gate on an open center, so he had to take in a lot of people's energies over his life. He did die. I just wanted to point that out because he died young for his
Yeah.
age. He was in his early 60s or 60, mid 60s, I think,
Third
67.
years, so his third year of life, and he died few months, like 2 or 3 months later, after the death of his mother, who was
Oh, I didn't
98
realize that.
at the moment. So this is a really interesting. So if one can put it like this, interesting topic to research, just because
Yeah.
like he died exactly in 2 months after his mother died.
Yeah. And I
So.
wanted to also point out his transiting north node was the exact degree of his Jupiter when he died.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uranus was directly conjunct his Mercury, and transiting Jupiter is 4 degrees away from his moon at the time. So he was out of all of these. When you look at death charts, you can see a lot of the transits are. are aligned in a way that's, again, that's very fascinating to see. And they're very specific to the chart, the charts symbols. Just looking at the North Node being in the exact degree of Jupiter. Jupiter was such an important, um, signature of his chart.
So you see the pattern here, like he left his body at the time when it was like more or less appropriate. Yeah, that's how you
Yeah.
see it from Pearl. Yeah, just because there is also contradiction here. Some people say like he died from a kind of intestine infection or whatever, something like what happened, which happened fast and unexpected. But as I heard from other sources, like it was he knew in advance that he was dying, like this 28 days, I suppose, in human design, then the cycle starts, like if you would live or die. And he knew it in advance. That's why some of his students, they even flew to Ibiza to be with him on in his last days. So it was not something like it just happened. No, he was expecting it. Somehow it
Mm.
was clear to him that he's leaving this plane.
Yeah, I don't know because I didn't hear any of that, but I thought he had died of a heart attack. That was the rumors that I heard. I didn't hear a lot about that
Mhm.
part of his life. I do know that he canceled a few things. He had
Mhm.
scheduled a reflector specific talk that he canceled, like as if he knew that it was going to happen. So maybe there was signs, but maybe he didn't know the exact day, and then he realized it. But I don't know. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to speak to that at all.
Mm. Maybe later we will have find invest. It's an interesting topic also to see to
We're
investigate.
investigators. We'll find it if
Yeah.
it doesn't. If we're meant to find it, yeah. Okay,
Mhm.
so are we ready to go
Always.
on to?
Yes, of course.
Okay,
Always ready.
so
And never
this
ready and
is
always ready. Yeah.
so we talked about two manifestors. Now we're going to talk about a projector. And Jeffrey Wolf Green is considered the father of evolutionary astrology, and he was very influential again in my life. And
Mhm.
I discovered him about the same time that I discovered human design, although I went mainly toward this direction. Um, and um, and this is another 5-1, but he is a
Mhm.
projector, and possibly that's why I was drawn to him more. I didn't realize he was a projector for a
Mhm.
while until I ran his human design chart, and I was like, wow. Yeah, let me get up his notes really quick because I want to make sure.
Mhm.
Um, okay. So what I wanted to point out the similarities also, like he had Jupiter again. He was a Scorpio rising, but he had Jupiter right on his ascendant as well. But I wanted to point out that Ra's South Node is the exact degree of Jeff's Jupiter, and that's in
Mhm.
gate 1. And Dane Rudhyar's Pluto in gate 16 was exact opposite of Jeff's Sun in gate 9. And again, where our North Node is in gate 9, um, and what was it that he had? Um, he's got the 22. His moon is in gate 22, nearish our Jupiter, but not exactly. But he also has because his sun is in that gate. He has the gate 16, but he also had the Neptune. He was born about the same time as Ra, but he doesn't have the Mars up
Mhm.
here. But he has the Pluto and Saturn right up on his 10th, midheaven. So that makes it important. And he's a Sag. He's a Sag, a Sun, and he has this South Node on his. The Sun on his South Node in Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter, and his Mars is also in Jupiter. But he published the very first book, an in-depth book about Pluto in 1985,
Mhm.
describing an entire astrological paradigm that measures the soul's growth and evolutionary intent from life to life. He said the book came to him in a dream, so he had a similar
Mhm.
kind of mystical experience, not as severe because he doesn't have that same signature, but he
Mhm.
had a dream that that basically showed him this whole what fueled his teaching in 1977, and it came to him, and I'm going to totally mispronounce this name, by Sri Yukteswar, and it was Yogananda's guru, and if you know Yogananda, he was a famous spiritual guru, and I did not know about Sri Yukteswar, but I did know about Yogananda, and they were Jeffrey's spiritual teachers. And 1977 was around his Saturn return, and guess what his Saturn return is on? It's basically the cross of revolution, but on the opposite side of us.
No, okay.
Which I thought was really interesting.
Uh-huh.
And he had that dream around his Saturn return, and Neptune was in alignment with his natal Mars. Pluto had been transiting his natal Neptune, and Uranus was approaching his Jupiter. And so, Neptune is very highly influential, because it is well, wait, I'm sorry, I'm lost here. It's Neptune. What is Neptune was in alignment with his natal Mars, so it was it was here, so it was and it's ruled by Jupiter. And Neptune is a spiritual, it's really kind of connects us to the veil of spiritual. It's considered a spiritual planet. It's got a lot of symbology around the spiritual, and Pluto was also transiting his natal Neptune up here when he had that dream. And then when he published the book in 1985, the nodes were on his ascendant, and so the nodes were right on his ascendant descendant, and right on his Jupiter. So that was basically the similar timing when he published the book as when Ra had his experience, which was a couple of years later. So I thought that was interesting.
But Ra was already on the way to his experience. He had some mystical experiences that were preliminary. Yeah. So
right.
Of course.
And Uranus was now transiting his Mars when he published. And Neptune was transiting his Chiron in the 12th house. And so I found that interesting. And then he soon began lecturing about it and applied it to his readings. And it wasn't until someone invited him to, that's when he published. But he in 1977, he had that dream, and he soon became a lecturer about it. He went on and he created a practice around this, what he had learned in his dream, but he didn't really publish the book until someone invited him. So it was interesting because he's a projector. So when somebody told him he should publish this book, he decided he needed to sit down and write it. And he wrote the book in 60 days. It basically came out of him in 60 days. And it's two books. It's a huge series. It's a very profound book. If you wanted to look it up, it's a really great book about Pluto and how Pluto is symbolic of our soul's journey. And evolutionary astrology is around Pluto and the nodes. I mean, everything is kind of involved in that, but it starts with Pluto. And what was interesting about him, he's got that open root too, and it's completely open. So he's got an undefined sacral, but he's got a completely open root. And he got sick. He had a periods of he smoked like a chimney. It was crazy when you see his videos. He's just like constantly smoking, like one after the other. And he had a really rough childhood. His mother abused him, and he went into Vietnam and all of that stuff. And he came into his own later in life, but he got sick a few times, and then he retired into seclusion in 2004. And there's a lot of rumors about that, and so that's funny about the heretic. He was revered, and then he went into seclusion. He retired people kind of speculate about what happened. And his daughter, he had a couple of wives and plenty of children, and his daughter took over his school. And people are like, is he dead? There's no actual information about what happened to him, and if he is alive or if he's dead, but there's no news that he's dead. I would imagine that his kids would tell us if he was dead, but it was interesting with that open root. And so that's why it made me think about it. He was also a splenic projector. He had an open emotional system. And I wanted to read a quote from him. It says, "It's important to remember that the evolutionary requirements of our times will occur in one way or another. They will occur through cataclysmic evolutionary and karmic events, or they will occur through a slow yet progressive events that reflect the proper choices that must be made by all of us as individuals and as a collective body. By confronting and understanding the issues, the proper choices preclude the necessity of cataclysmic change. It was in this spirit, by the way, that Nostradamus offered his visions of the future. He felt, as does the author, that the cataclysmic events, as predicted by so many for the immediate future, are not fated." So, so that's when I think about Ra's prophecy and what he was told happening. So if you look at he's hope motivated, and he's actually power view. You could tell in his writings he's power view. He talks about politics all the time. But what I think about that, there's prophecies, but to me prophecies are never set. It's because I think life is too, there I think there's definitely a design to everything, but at the same time anything can set off into another direction.
Of course,
chaos.
there is always a chance that another version of the future would come into force, in play.
So whatever that Ra heard from that philosophy, I always just like, okay, well, that could happen. I can understand where he got that from and looking at the cycles and all of that, but I don't have this idea that it's fixed until it happens, because that's just that's just my mind trying to fix this future into focus, and I just don't, I'm not certain of anything. He also did a lot of psychedelics, specifically mescaline and peyote in his life. He's Pluto and Mars ruled, because he's got his ascendant is the traditional ruler is Mars, which is also ruled by Jupiter, but his the modern ruler is Pluto, and he's got a moon square the nose like us, so he did have the problems with the mother, and the problems with the security that he had, and later in life had to retire. And it seems like that's very root oriented with that open root, and he also had a lack of earth in his chart. And the sun on his south node, and Uranus in his north node, and Mercury rules the north node, and Mercury is up here with Venus and Jupiter, and he had a lot of children, which I thought was interesting. I'm losing my notes here. He was also married with a brood of kids. He also became a hermit, fire and air dominant, lots of water, but Scorpio, which is more intense than like the Pisces energy that he had. So, he came in again as a spirit, with a lot of spiritual knowledge, and he's got the gate 11, he's got the channel of talent, he's also got the alpha channel. So he came in with a lot of knowledge, which he delivered, and then he just kind of faded into the background.
Yeah, because he was feeling insecure, and if we see the 18th gate, that usually marks a traumatic and problematic childhood. Yeah, that's all we see in his body graph. What I find truly interesting that his Pluto, you see, it's like opposite to the ones, uh, the same gates, but like we're changing the positions. Yeah, the one that comes, that Ra has in his personality, he has in his design, and vice versa. And the lines
Hmm.
are different, but the nature itself stays the same. I do consider Pluto in human design chart as a true nature of the individual that could come sooner or later to the surface. Some people need a lot of almost the whole life to get to it. Maybe Ra was definitely on the early side of showing his true nature to the world.
Yeah. Yeah,
Green also.
manifester. It's really
Yeah.
manifester. To me, it's like that the difference between the manifester and the projector and how those each play out. Jeff he was a teacher, but he was much more involved in the counseling, and the
Mhm.
spiritual counseling and the readings and things like that. But he was very blunt. He could come off as, he's a Sagittarius sun, so he's very blunt, and he could come off as off-putting. You could see that in his recordings. But I just love, he's so kooky, and so he's filled with knowledge, very much understood history, was very smart and knowledgeable about history, which he integrated into his astrology and the delivery of astrology, plus the spiritual, just like Dane Rudhyar. I think that Ra was his own way spiritual, but he was, and it was almost like
He was too brutal for for open spirituality. Yeah,
he was like, oh, woo woo stuff. He was a
he
little
was a
bit,
bad
very
guy, a truly bad
cynical
guy.
about it. Yeah, he couldn't help but but kind of go there. But at the same time, he had a lot of he had a lot of disdain, I think, for certain
Mhm.
spiritual people. And I maybe he saw through a lot of that. There's a lot of
Yeah,
people out there teaching spirituality, but really aren't in touch with. He had a lot of opinions around the spiritual people of his age, and he was born at that certain time, the hippie age, the
yeah, it was.
'60s, um,
Mhm.
and there was a lot of hypocrisy that came out of that movement, and a lot of gurus that were later turned out to be frauds, and so it's understandable, but it was just interesting their point of views and how they looked at the world, each of them.
Yeah, yeah. I
So
think
we're
it's time
getting
for us
we're
already. Yeah, getting
we're
behind the
we're
schedule.
getting behind, but we have to do our judgments. And so let's
Yeah,
see.
of course.
I'm gonna try to go through. Do you want to begin or do you want me to begin?
Oh, uh, you talked a lot recently, so last few minutes I can start if it is
Yeah, you do it
okay with
because I
you.
don't want
Yeah.
to. Yeah.
So I was like, so I don't know what approach you would use for your judgment topic. I'm truly positive already. One more time. Last time I was talking about Dr. K and this interesting documentary about fascia. Do I pronounce it right? Yeah,
Fascia,
fascia,
fascia, yeah.
fascia, yeah, fascia actually, fascia tissue in our body. So I simply stumbled upon a video on YouTube, and this is a totally new approach to the understanding of human body and how it functions, how we move. So I just would read shortly to make it to tell it properly, more or
Please.
less. A global revolution in anatomical research is underway, fundamentally changing our understanding of the human body. This revolution centers around fascia, a network of connective tissue without a beginning or end, which connects all our organs, cells, and holds us actually our body together. Previously, during the operations and when researching the human body, and from Leonardo da Vinci times, it was considered like, okay, it's kind of wrapping paper. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Let's throw it away and investigate our livers functioning and how our brain is working. But actually, this tissue is extremely important in everything, and how the body moves. especially, and how our organs are feeling and positioned inside our body. And this newfound insight has ignited a flurry of discoveries that are beginning to challenge our conventional beliefs about the human body. And here we are coming close to the topic of menopause and menopausal female suffering. Yeah, let's put it like this. I have two close people in my life, two women who are suffering from frozen shoulder. Frozen shoulder
Mm,
situation where when you cannot turn in your bed properly, when you feel enormous pain when you bring your hand up simply. And the problem with this situation, so most likely it is caused by a change in receptors in female body when the hormonal level is going down. Yeah, but and the hormones which influence the whole body itself, are change, bringing us to this state. And this is a state which actually cannot be cured, as I heard. Some kind of physical therapy could be helpful, but actually only the medication just to see this pain. Sometimes it helps. It could be really disastrous. One of my close friends, she spends time in bed instead of doing
mm,
the things which are interesting to her, and which was fascinating in this fascia documentary, which I found on YouTube, that actually with the help of device that one person developed, within it could be cured. So normally it lasts for up to year and a half, 18 months of suffering when nothing could be done. Yeah, because
mm.
of also only because of changing of hormone levels in female body. And this small and relatively simple device, it uses vibration and massage, and you simply have to know where to apply it. That's like the other question, how to find the person who truly understands your body. And when you apply it to fascia tissues around your shoulder, it could be cured in 3 days. Like immediately, he's showing it on live. He was a person who is also female. I don't remember exactly what woman it was, but he's trying to help her on the video, and in 5 minutes she says like, "Oh, I can raise my hand up." So it's
Oh my
like
God.
kind of miracle. Just this simple understanding how fascia tissues are working and what influence it could bring to our body. So people with back pain and all these endless problems that a lot of us have, it could be cured so easily and effectively. 5-1 effective solutions. Yeah. So
Yeah,
sometimes this video was like looking more like kind of advertisement
yeah,
video for this device, but in general, this fascia movement and a lot of surprises in good sense that we could expect from it, not only for women, for everybody, for kids.
yeah.
So some painful states of our body could be cured so much simpler if we understand the complex nature of fascia tissues and how we can deal with it.
And
So I was really amazed.
the
Hmm.
complex nature of our body
Hmm.
just in holistic measure, we've gotten so siloed, in the ways that we treat our symptoms in our body, and
Hmm.
it's a holistic mechanism that needs to be in balance, and
Hmm.
very complex, ways that our bodies work, and one change, one medicine affects another part of your body. And I don't think they
Hmm.
really understand how that all
Wow.
works together. And
Hmm.
so, it is something that I hope that there's a point where we get to understand all of that and treat our body more holistically, so that we're not
Hmm.
treating one thing to cause harm to the other, especially
Hmm.
the diversity of who we, as when I guess when we study genetics more specifically, like Ra actually tried to do in his, um, because in human design there's also the PHS health
Genetic
system and all those things, which I'm sometimes a little bit skeptical of the ways that people use that system, but the point is that we each have a very specific way their body is built, which has similarities, some generic
Mhm.
similarities to others, but it's very specific. And sometimes what is good for one is not good for the whole, and just like the human body. So yeah, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, so
My
you're absolutely right. The holistic understanding of bodies, that's what this fascia research and all the fruits of it would bring to us,
Yeah,
which was clear for Chinese medicine 1,000 years ago, many thousand years ago, but still, it's nice that we are getting
coming
whole
back.
heading direction, yeah, coming back and moving
Yeah,
forward.
I mean, I think that's what the positive, I would hope, that could come out of this AI movement. That the when you look at it right now, I just and this is my topic, which is what has come out, like right when Pluto went into Aquarius, we had this whole discovery of the Chat GPT kind of launched, and all of this unveiling of the truth of what AI systems can actually do. I think that, and what it was focused on very specifically when it first launched, was coming after the creative spirit. And it's, I think, always, from, and I've been writing about this a lot, is that it's people don't like to, businesses need creativity to get people interested. They use creativity to tap into the spirit, to get people interested, knowledge and creativity. And what AI came out with, and what, there's been a lot of hype around what it actually can do and what it's set up to do at this moment. And I think there's been more and more truth about what it is actually capable of, but it is pushed, it's pushed to the forefront because it's very easy to, I think, I think, to go after the creativity first. That's just kind of been the cycle of innovation, which is, I don't want to pay for this creativity. It's not worth anything, so I'm just going to take it and monopolize the spirit for my own purposes and not pay anything for it, because I can, all of these creative people, we do it because we love it, and it taps us into something that we're born for. And so people take advantage of that, which is exactly what the creative, um, the artists and the writers, object to, which is basically what was out there as a way to share, um, our creations, was basically taken from us and put into this machine that's making other people money. And as we go into, what is the end game of this? We're so focused on productivity, but productivity so far has been, actually only benefiting a few people. Like, and where are we headed? Are we? It's just going to be more and more of productivity to benefit, fewer and fewer people. And I think there's been an incredible backlash, as has seen in this video, and where this video was in this article, which I would like to share a few quotes from, but we're getting to be, we might have to bring it back. But it's basically a backlash, and South by Southwest, there was a lot of people coming in, and, there was a lot of, hype about AI, and people kind of promoting it. And there was a lot of boos in the audience from the creative spirit, and the creators, the filmmakers, and all of that,
Mhm.
because of all of the hype that's been out there, and because it's been pushing a lot of people, myself included, and my husband. A lot of people have lost their jobs. And it's not just the creators, but now it's the developers themselves. And it's like, well, what is this whole purpose for AI if it's going to take away our creative spirit, and nobody's going to benefit from it than a few people? So I'm going to leave it there. We'll talk about that later because we're running out of time, and my dog is barking. He needs to go out. So we'll leave here. We had a lot of jam packed in this episode, so we'll probably have to talk about some other, to kind of further develop these ideas. I think it would be
Right.
great. But I'm going to say goodbye for now. Thanks for, your watching this if you're here. And I really
Staying
enjoyed
alive
talking to you,
until this.
Tatiana. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you. Thank you,
All right.
everybody, for your attention.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you,
Bye.
Susan. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.